Had very constructive discussions here between African countries and the European Union. But what we're doing in Europe, what the UK is doing, obviously as well as ensuring that we break that link, we want to work with African countries, which are the countries of origin for people, to ensure that people don't feel the need to make this journey to Europe. So in the UK, for example, we're putting 200 million extra aid into Africa to help.
On Tuesday night, riot police used tear gas and water cannon as they clashed with migrants living in temporary camps close to the French port. Tension has been growing around the camp in recent weeks as security in the area is increased. And thousands of migrants continue to arrive in Europe every day. Many come across the Aegean Sea. Ed Thomas is on the Greek island of Lesbos, which has seen the greatest number of arrivals.
This is business as usual on Lesbos. Every day up to 60 boats like this arriving on the shores of this island. In the distance is Turkey, and this flow now is non-stop. There is no control to this. We've got young children here who have made this journey. Hundreds have died in the Aegean Sea this year alone.
Yeah, because there is war. And take his children who come to here to live in Germany, Sweden, Romania, Europe.
And this is what European leaders need to consider today. There are so many questions still not answered. Where will these people go? Where will they live? How will they live? And that's before even the bigger questions have been answered. What needs to happen when you consider Turkey? More than 500,000 people have left Turkey this year alone. And then there's the war in Syria, conflict. In places like Afghanistan, how will all these questions be solved? And at the moment, this crisis seems...
Kurds are firing off rocket after rocket down onto the town below there. This is Mount Sinjar. It overlooks the town of the same name. The town itself was captured in August of last year by IS in that lightning offensive it staged, and now part of the town has already been recaptured by the Kurds some time ago. They're fighting now, they're calling this Operation Free Sinjar, determined to recapture it, and firing off more rockets any moment now. I think they're going to be doing it. So it's really a very explosives to hold up the advance and cause very heavy casualties.
Jim, you were there with Kurdish forces. Now here, the NHS in England missed its September target to see 95% of accident and emergency patients within 4 hours in A&E. There were other failings too on access to cancer treatment, diagnostic tests and ambulance response times. Well, it's being put down to growing pressures on the NHS in England. Our health correspondent Adam Brimelow is with me. Adam, we're not even into winter yet, and these are some very worrying pieces of news, a whole series of them, in fact.
Well, that's right. I mean, what we have here are figures really for late summer, early August, the figures for September. But when you look across the piece at various different measures, it looks like the NHS is in the midst of a very tough winter. It has to be said, on that 4-hour target in accident and emergency, it's become almost routine for the health service to miss that target. It's only managed it 1 month during the course of the year. It missed it again in September. I think particularly worrying, though, is the increase in delayed discharges, and on one measure that looked to have reached the highest level since records started back in 2010. Now, this reflects really wider problems, not just within the health service, but beyond as well, because it's about arranging suitable care for patients once they're ready to leave their hospital bed. And so they're getting stuck in the bed. That's making it harder to admit patients, and the whole system gets clogged up.
So the knock-on effect, if you like, for the whole hospital ecosystem then is really severely dented if people are ready to leave hospital, but actually they've got nowhere to go to.
That's right, and we're seeing at the same time a really continuous, inexorable rise in emergency admissions. This is something that the health service is working hard to try to address, trying to anticipate problems, prevent people having these crises, so they need emergency admissions. Lots of initiatives going on up and down the health service at the moment to try to achieve this, but that's not coming through in the figures yet.
Any reaction yet, Adam, from the government to any of these sets of figures?
Well, I think, what the government will point to justifiably is that against one of the key measures, which is the 18-week target from GP referral to hospital treatment, that's a key target. The NHS is still managing to hit that target. Clearly, the service is under pressure. There are growing demands being placed on it. NHS budgets have been protected so far, but the service is saying it's going to need more money in that comprehensive spending review to ensure that it can remain sustainable, particularly through these coming winter months.
OK, Adam, thank you very much for that. Adam Brimelow. I'll be talking to the King's Fund later, primarily about their concerns about cost-cutting and the impact on mental health services, but also we'll put a question to them about that as well. That's the health think tank, the King's Fund. Now, the headlines for you on BBC News this morning. It's almost 11:20. The Indian Prime Minister, Narendra Modi, has arrived in London for a 3-day visit to the UK. The leader of the world's largest democracy will address Parliament later. African and EU leaders sign a deal designed to reduce the number of migrants making their way to Europe. Fresh evidence, the NHS in England is struggling to cope, as we've just been discussing, after A&E targets are missed and more than 5,000 patients occupy beds despite being ready to leave hospital. Also in a moment, why George Clooney's causing a stir in Edinburgh.
And in sport, the Russian President Vladimir Putin has ordered a full investigation into claims of state-sponsored doping. His words come after a World Anti-Doping Agency report recommended the country be banned from athletics. After Stuart Lancaster parted ways with England yesterday, the search is on for a new head coach. But will the RFU have to look further afield for their new man? And Sergio Garcia is the first round leader at the European Tour event in Shanghai. He's one shot clear on 8 under after an opening 64. Now I'll be back with more on those stories just after past. I'll see you.
Back now to that news that 4 men have been arrested in the Midlands and north of England today in connection with alleged terror offences. With me now, our Home Affairs correspondent June Kelly. So June, these arrests as a result of Europe-wide warrants issued by Italian police.
That's right, Anita. This is an international operation, and we have 17 arrest warrants issued, and 4 of those arrests took place in the UK. We've got a 38-year-old man from Hull, 32-year-old from Derby, a 33-year-old from Birmingham, and a 52-year-old detained at an address in Sheffield. Now, in this country, the operation was led by detectives from the North East Counter-Terrorism Unit, and they say the arrests took place between 5 and 7 a.m. this morning. They say there were no armed officers involved, and those addresses are now being searched. But all this was done at the request of the Italians. So these men are now being held at a police station in the north of England and will be brought down to London to Westminster Magistrates Court and then will be handed over to the Italians.
And what more can you tell us? Okay, June, thank you very much. June Kelly. Now, there are claims the Prime Minister could be in breach of the Ministerial Code of Conduct after he invited a council leader to seek spending advice from the Cabinet's policy unit. It happened after David Cameron complained to the leader of Oxfordshire County Council about spending cuts that affect his constituency. Labour's Jonathan Ashworth has written to Cabinet Secretary Sir Jeremy Haywood asking for a ruling on whether the ministerial code was broken.
And what I'm concerned about is that the Prime Minister seems to be conflating his ministerial role as Prime Minister with his role as the Member of Parliament for Witney. And to be frank, I doubt he's inviting the leader of Leicester City Council, where I'm an MP, or the leader of Manchester City Council into the number 10 policy unit to discuss ways to deal with the cuts. It feels like it's a breach, and I hope that the Cabinet Secretary can look into it.
Jonathan Ashworth. A nurse who contracted Ebola while working in Sierra Leone has been declared free of the virus and taken out of isolation. Pauline Kafaki had been readmitted to the specialist unit. At the Royal Free in London last month after falling ill for a second time with Ebola. She's now been transferred to a hospital in Glasgow to continue her recovery closer to home. Doctors in England are warning that fewer patients are having seasonal flu vaccinations in their surgeries compared to this time last year. The Royal College of GPs claims the decline in take-up could be leaving vulnerable people at risk. But Public Health England says 400,000 jabs have been given in pharmacies, and some of those may not yet have been entered into patient records. Here's our health correspondent, Dominic Hughes.
Getting a flu jab helps prevent what can be a very nasty illness. But so far this winter, doctors have seen a significant drop in the number of patients asking to be vaccinated.
We don't know whether
Ten doses, and in this surgery doctors believe they have around 1,000 doses still left over, which indicates many patients have yet to be vaccinated. And that's a picture many other surgeries in the country are also reporting. Patients can also get the flu jab from pharmacists, but the majority of NHS vaccinations are carried out in GP practices. And even if milder weather has led to fewer people seeking vaccinations, doctors warn that flu outbreaks develop independently of a cold snap, and the impact on health can be serious. Dominic Hughes, BBC News.
Russia's president has pledged his full cooperation with international anti-doping bodies and promised his Government's own investigation into allegations of widespread doping in Russian athletics.
Open, and I want to stress this, the most open professional cooperation with international anti-doping structures. Here in Russia, we must do all we can to get rid of this problem.
A blood testing laboratory in Moscow was accused of taking bribes and destroying samples. Its accreditation has now been suspended and the head of the lab has resigned. There's now pressure on the government to restore confidence in Russia's anti-doping procedures.
We can change the quality of testing. We can move from quantity indicators to quality indicators. We can move from direct common doping tests to biological passport, which practically excludes any manipulation and immediately gets into the system. Secondly, we want to seriously consider tightening responsibility and maybe think about criminal responsibility.
The Russian Athletics Federation is expected to respond to the allegations, but the international governing body for athletics, the IAAF, also has questions to answer about its alleged involvement.
It's not just Russia's problem, but if our foreign colleagues have any questions, they should be resolved, and it should be done in the open. I repeat it once again, professional, honest work together with our colleagues.
The headlines of recent days have been damaging to a nation that is a sporting superpower. Being banned from the 2016 Olympic Games would be humiliating. But will the tough words and apparent decisive action be enough to avoid that? Ben Bland, BBC News.
Now take a look at these pictures. A professional skier has had a very lucky escape after falling down a 1,600-foot mountain in Alaska. Oh. Ian McIntosh, you can just about see as that tiny speck in these pictures cartwheeled down the slope.
In the forecast, but there's a lot else coming in our direction, notably strong winds from Storm Abigail, as you may be aware, is making a beeline for the northwest of the UK, and this is where the impacts will be greatest. For the rest of us, increasingly blustery out there through the rest of the day, and we'll see some wet weather arriving initially across Northern Ireland, spreading through western Scotland, and this squally band of really heavy rain will extend into western parts of England and Wales eventually. Further east, fine enough day, quite mild too, although increasingly windy. Some really nasty weather from this band of wet weather, but then...
And to find out how to download the ebook, visit bbc.co.uk/WW1.
Hello, very good morning to you. This is BBC News with me, Anita McVeigh. The headlines at 11:31. The Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has arrived in London for a 3-day visit to the UK. Mr Modi is set to address Parliament later, and there'll be a flypast by the Red Arrows over Westminster. African and EU leaders have agreed to the creation of a £1.3 billion fund to help African countries try to reduce the number of migrants heading to Europe. The NHS in England has missed its September target to see 95% of accident and emergency patients within 4 hours. It's also understood more than 5,000 patients were left occupying hospital beds despite being ready to leave. And Hollywood film star George Clooney has visited a charity cafe in Edinburgh. The Social Bite employs homeless people and donates all its profits to charity. And coming up later, we'll get the latest on Storm Abigail.
Winner Jake White is among the favourites. Eddie Jones, who coached the Japan team that performed so well at the World Cups, also linked with the job. Australia's Michael Cheika, another name said to be under consideration. But there's one man who's ruled himself out. It's All Blacks assistant coach Wayne Smith. So, former England coach Sir Clive Woodward has criticised the RFU in a national newspaper this morning. He feels he could be involved himself at some level in leading the revival of English rugby. Earlier I spoke to our rugby reporter Chris Jones.
Woodward is pointing the finger here, Hugh, squarely at the RFU Chief Executive Ian Ritchie. Now, Ritchie was the man who appointed Lancaster in the first place. He gave him increased powers over the English game. He gave him a brand spanking new contract through to 2019 and beyond. And now Ritchie is the man to lead this recruitment process all over again. So Woodward is saying, how can this guy who made a mistake in the first place get another chance? Woodward arguing there should be a figure in between the Chief Executive and the head coach, a performance director, if you like, someone for the head coach to lean on and confide in. We do have to caveat all this by saying Woodward feels he's the man for that job, and so he's somehow using his Daily Mail column as a way of putting in his job application. Doesn't mean they're not very valid points, of course, and the RFU, though, would argue on the other hand, Hugh, that the head coach needs to have total authority and shouldn't be answerable to anyone. So it's going to be fascinating to see how things go over the next few weeks.
Chelsea ladies will have to come from behind against Wolfsburg if they're to make the quarter-finals of the Champions League. A goal from Carolina Hansen gave Wolfsburg a 2-1 win at Wheatsheaf Park in Staines last night. The return leg takes place in Germany next week. England captain Owen Morgan says he believes his batsmen will improve going into tomorrow's second one-day international against Pakistan in Abu Dhabi. The tourists are 1 down in the 4-match series. They were bowled out for 216 yesterday. Pakistan cruised to victory by 6 wickets, largely thanks to a century from Mohammad Hafiz.
Conditions will curb their natural game, and it's a matter of them having that positive intent that we've showed in the past and going out there and playing as much as they can. It's their first series on the subcontinent, so I mean it's a matter of them learning as much as they can and taking it forward game by game.
Sergio Garcia is the first round leader at the European Tour event in Shanghai. He's 1 shot clear on 8 under after a 64. The Spaniard has won 11 times on tour, and with 9 birdies and 1 bogey in his first round, he'll be looking to make it title number 12 in China. The likes of England's Ross Fisher and Paul Casey are chasing Garcia, along with Justin Rose. He's one of several players aiming to overtake Rory McIlroy in the race to Dubai standings, as the world number 3 isn't playing this week. So, how would you train for a world heavyweight fight? Well, Tyson Fury has come up with a pretty unique method as he prepares to face Vladimir Klitschko at the end of the month. Please don't try this at home.
2, 3.
Yeah, Fury headbutting watermelons there, presumably good practice for any punches he might receive. At least he got one of his 5 a day. Yeah, I might have a fruit salad myself. That's all the
dark. Well, with me now is Helen Gilbert, the author of today's report by the King's Fund. Helen, welcome. Thank you for coming along. So what is the evidence you have of a risk or potential risk to patients from cost cutting?
So what we've done is we've looked at quality across the system, and we've done this through both looking at reports that have been written widely, looking at all the news stories such as you've published. What we've found is actually the instances of quality and issues around care are actually quite widespread across the system. 14%, only 14% of patients report that when they sought help in a crisis, they got appropriate support. And we know that there are widespread bed pressures, and often when people seek the right help, it's not available.
So what are these leap-in-the-dark self-help treatments that you're talking about as well? What sort of things are you talking about? What are your concerns around them?
So I think our concerns are that as money has reduced, mental health providers have restructured their services and the staff that are available to provide them. What we've seen is a move away from some of the evidence-based services which we know work. And we've seen a move towards trying to support people in the community quite legitimately, but a greater emphasis on much more self-management. Well, while that is legitimate and at the King's Fund we really value that move, a switch from evidence-based services and a fast pace of change towards people managing their own conditions in the community has impacted on care.
Now, the government says it increased the funding for mental health services by £300 million last year to almost £12 billion. It says it wants parity of esteem for mental health services in addition to services for physical problems. So is the money there? Are you saying that the government is wrong on this?
No, the government has claimed it's increased funding. One of the challenges around where the funding is how the funding meets the needs of people in the community and how that funding flows. So while my funding may be flowing to voluntary sector services or to other new types of services, what we found in our report is that 40% of mental health trusts, so that's providers who meet the needs of people with long-term mental health problems and those people seeking help in a crisis, their budgets in the last 2 years, 40% have received a reduction in income.
We've been talking this morning already about delayed discharge, delays in people being able to leave hospital beds, about failures to meet A&E waiting time targets again. And is the subject of care for people with mental illness part of the wider pressures facing the NHS, in your opinion?
It is part of
the controversial figure both inside and outside India, and protests during the visit are expected too. Poonam Taneja from the BBC's Asian Network reports.
The grace of the Royal Ballet fused with ancient South Indian dance. It's choreographed to present the new British-Indian relationship. These dancers are getting ready to perform in front of the Prime Minister of India at Wembley Stadium. This stadium has hosted rock stars and sports legends.
Activists to human rights activists to people who believe their religions are under attack. आप सबको नमस्कार.
But leading figures from the world of business, politics and entertainment will be at Wembley. To his fans, any criticisms of him are easily brushed aside.
There are always going to be people who say he didn't do this or he didn't do that, but I am just going on what I know of this person.
What he has achieved in a span of less than 2 years, I think Indian prime ministers have not done that in the past for 50 years.
Poonam Taneja, BBC News.
Forecasters are warning people in much of Scotland to prepare for the arrival of Storm Abigail. The storm, which is the first to be officially named by the Met Office, is expected to hit this evening, bringing heavy rain and gusts of up to 90 miles an hour. Well, with me now is John Hammond from the BBC Weather Centre. John, welcome to the studio. So how big a storm can we expect given the time of year?
Well, it's not that unusual. That's the first thing to say. Blustery winds in November, not that unusual at all. This storm is targeting the far northwest of Scotland, and the far northwest of Scotland is used to very strong winds as well. So we don't want to get this out of proportion. It's not that unusual, but it is the first named storm, named. That is an initiative from the Met Office to try and increase public awareness of these storms and ultimately to help people stay safe. We can look at the satellite picture and you can see it developing actually out in the Atlantic. It's quite an angry hook of cloud, and over the last few hours it's been targeting the northwest of Scotland. You can see that. Now the cloud of this storm is going to produce some huge waves. I mean, we're talking about waves of metres high. They'll be crashing onto the shoreline and they'll be producing locally some coastal flooding. Transport certainly is going to be disrupted, and there's a real possibility of some power cuts as well. So, you know, it's not to be taken lightly, this storm. It's not that unusual for the time of year in this part of the world.
So a good bit of context there for us, John. This prompted quite a discussion in the newsroom this morning when we were talking about this. People saying how mild it's been so far, and is this the start of more true winter weather to come?
You wait till tomorrow, it won't feel mild at all. Actually, a blast of cold in the wake of Abigail. We're going to see some proper cold air. There'll be snow up over the high grounds of northern Britain. Nothing too extreme, but a shock to the system nonetheless. Just a quick footnote, Anita. Once Abigail is out of the way...
You can call it Anita if you want.
Okay, let's call it. No, once Abigail is out of the way, we've got our eyes on a development out in the Atlantic which has got a lot of moist tropical air in it. Now that's heading towards us for the weekend, and it won't be the wind which is the concern from that, but rainfall. Copious amounts of rain, particularly to the high ground of Western Britain, and that could bring flooding. So we're keeping a close eye on that, and that could well have serious impacts through the weekend and indeed beyond. A busy period.
A very busy time for you, John. Thank you very much for that, John Hammond. Now, Hollywood A-lister George Clooney has swapped the red carpet for the cobbled streets of Edinburgh this morning in a visit to a sandwich shop which provides help to the poor. It's called Social Bite, and it lets customers pay for food and drink on behalf of homeless. people in the city. The actor was invited there by the cafe's owner, Josh Littlejohn, and had a few words for the fans and waiting reporters before going inside.
Well, I like what they're doing. I think it's a very important cause. I think the idea that we can all participate in everyone's difficulties is really important.
Units are donated to good causes, and we also run a service called Suspended Food and Coffee, where customers can come in and prepay for anything on the menu for homeless people to come and get later. And the third aspect, which I think is the most powerful, is that a quarter of our workforce are people that previously struggled with homelessness themselves, so people you would have maybe seen begging or selling the big issue. We bring in and give them employment.
Great publicity for that project. Well, we can cross live now to Malta, where, of course, over the last couple of days, this is the Maltese Prime Minister just speaking, European and African leaders have been meeting to try to discuss ways and find ways of stemming the flow of people from Africa to Europe.
I believe that this is, as we said from the very beginning, a very important first step forward. I think no one is expecting this to be the be-all and end-all, but I think that this is the first time that genuinely the European and African partners have faced each other, spoke very clearly. I was hearing speeches both yesterday and today where there was a great deal of convergence, yes, but there were also some confrontations on where we might disagree. I think that there is a broad agreement that this should be a two-way traffic agreement, in the sense that this is a first step to establish a wider, wide-ranging cooperation between Europe and Africa. I'm one of those who believe that we should not look just at the issue of migration on its own, but rather look also at the huge potential that Africa has. There are blueprints to which we can refer, and I think that now the action plan shows, maybe for the first time, the commitment of Europe to see the relationship flourish. One might argue whether the money put in is enough. It's never enough. It will never be enough, but it is definitely a tremendous step forward. A final word as a European. It might be easy to criticize Europe for maybe not always speaking with the same voice and having dissenting views on the issue of migration. I, for one, I'm a very vocal critic of the fact that we maybe started acting a little bit too late and when too many lives were lost at sea, and we have a first-hand experience of that. But I must say I'm a proud European, because Europe is definitely the only group of countries in the world that is trying to act together and is doing something tangible in a way to forge a partnership with Africa that looks beyond just money, that looks beyond just the economic development. But I hope that today we have sowed the seeds of something that can be much more long-term and a genuine partnership. Thank you.
Thank you, Prime Minister. And now over to President Donald Tusk.
Thank you very much, Joseph. Dear Prime Minister, President, we have had 2 days of frank and productive discussions here in Valletta on the important subject of migration. I would like to thank all those who attended the summit for their commitment to address migration together. Seizing the opportunities and facing the challenges of migration require us to work together. None of us can manage the phenomenon on our own. This is why we wanted to hold this dialogue. What we have agreed is a crucial step in reinforcing our cooperation. We have adopted a political declaration and a Valletta action plan. We now need to get moving on implementing it in partnership and solidarity. The elements of the action plan are designed to: 1. Address the root causes of migration. 2. Enhance cooperation on legal migration and mobility. 3. Reinforce protection of displaced persons. 4. Prevent and fight against migrant smuggling and trafficking in human beings. And 5. advance on returning persons that are not entitled to stay in Europe. Those are the goals. What is equally or maybe even more important is that we have agreed a long list of very concrete actions to be implemented by the end of 2016. Let me mention a few examples. We will launch projects to enhance employment opportunities in regions of origin and transit of migrants in East, North and West Africa. We will double the number of scholarships for students and researchers through the Erasmus Plus program. We will establish regional development and protection programs in the Horn of Africa and North Africa by mid-2016. We will set up a joint investigation team in Niger against migrant smuggling and trafficking as a pilot project, possibly to be used in other countries or regions if useful. We will facilitate returns, preferably voluntary, by a number of concrete steps, such as African immigration officials traveling to Europe to help verify and identify the nationalities of irregular migrants. And to help implement what we have agreed, we have launched the EU Trust Fund with a minimum of €1 billion. This comes on top of EU and Member States' development assistance to African countries of €20 billion every year. We are under no illusions that we can improve the situation overnight, but we are committed to giving people alternatives to risking their lives. Lastly, let me again thank all colleagues for their constructive inputs before and during the summit, and thank Prime Minister Muscat for hosting us here in Malta. Thank you very much again. Thank you.
Thank you. Et finalement, Monsieur le Président Macky Sall.
Je vous remercie. Je voudrais commencer par remercier le Premier ministre Joseph Muscat, hôte du sommet, et le président Donald Tusk, président du Conseil européen, pour la manière dont il a conduit nos travaux. Je me félicite surtout de la tenue de ce sommet Europe-Afrique sur la migration.
The Senegalese President Macky Sall there. Let's see if he begins to speak
Notre sommet,
in English.
dans un esprit de responsabilité,
But just before that, you heard from Donald Tusk, the President of the European Commission. What we have agreed is a crucial step forward in reinforcing our cooperation, but under no illusions that we can improve the situation overnight, he said after this two-day summit involving around 60 European and African leaders. But he did talk about a number of programs that have been set up as a result of this summit, more regional development for the
that has been reached can be improved, but above all, it must be implemented, allowing Europeans and Africans to address this issue and to do so in a calm and determined manner. We must address the issue of mobility in a different way, but together we can fight trafficking in human beings and illegal migration. I think this is a summary of what the President of the European Council has said. And I'm also very pleased with the adoption of...
And we'll bring you more on that summit throughout the morning and the afternoon. The headlines are coming up on the BBC News channel. In a moment, we say goodbye to viewers on BBC Two. But first, let's take a look at the weather again. That's with John Hammond. Hi, John.
Thank you very much indeed, Anita. As you may be aware by now, there's some pretty rough weather on the way. For some of us, just a blustery spell, but for a few, a lot worse than that. And it all hinges on Storm Abigail, the first named storm from the Met Office, an angry hook of cloud developing out in the Atlantic, and it's heading directly towards the far northwest of the country, and that's where the impacts from Abigail. Later, the Northern Isles, an amber warning in force from the Met Office. Be prepared for significant disruption. What sort of disruption do I mean? Well, certainly some coastal flooding from huge waves crashing onto the shoreline. Already there's been ferry cancellations and a very real possibility of some power cuts. In the wake of Abigail, a shot of cold air sweeps across the country during the course of Friday. Quite a chase for warnings, a very rough spell of weather coming in our direction. All the latest, including warnings, of course, can be found on the BBC weather website.
Discover how World War I changed your world. Uncover amazing stories about the people and places where you live. These stories, told through photos, audio and film, many courtesy of Imperial War Museums are now available in the BBC World War I at Home interactive ebook. It's free, and to find out how to download the ebook, visit bbc.co.uk/WW1.
African and EU leaders sign a deal designed to reduce the number of migrants making their way to Europe.
We are under no illusions that we can improve the situation overnight, but we are committed to giving people alternatives to risking their lives.
4 men have been arrested in the UK as part of a suspected network of jihadists detained across Europe. They were allegedly plotting to free their leader from prison in Norway. Also coming up in the next hour, fresh evidence the NHS in England is struggling to cope. Growing pressures lead to A&E targets being missed and more than 5,000 patients occupying hospital beds despite being ready to leave. And look who's dropped in for coffee. Hollywood film star George Clooney visits a cafe which helps the homeless in Edinburgh. Also a taste of winter as Scotland prepares for Storm Abigail.
For the Prime Minister and a lot of events over the course of the next 2 days as well. Let's just have a quick look at the calendar. So he arrived at Heathrow in the last hour. Priti Patel, the Work and Pension Secretary, was there to greet him. He was brought here to Downing Street. We understand bilateral talks will be going on this morning. We understand that around £10 billion worth of trade deals will be signed over the course of the next 2 days. Small fry in terms of the business that the two countries done, but significant nonetheless. And then from there, from Downing Street, they'll go to Parliament Square to see the statue of Mahatma Gandhi, which was unveiled earlier this year. There was a hope that Mr. Modi would unveil that statue, but the general election got in the way of that. And then after that, they'll come to the Parliament behind me. It's the first time, in fact, that an Indian Prime Minister has spoken to a joint session of Parliament, so that's quite a landmark event in itself. But really the key moment, I suppose, in the course of the next 2 days, the meeting or the political rally at Wembley. David Cameron there merely as the warm-up act for a Prime Minister that is seen around the world in sort of rock star terms. He's been in Madison Square Gardens talking to almost 20,000 people there. This time, this event will be 3 times bigger. Around 70,000 Indians bust in from all around the country to see the Prime Minister and to hear him speak. It's there to mark the end of Diwali, the Indian Festival of Lights, and at the end of the day tomorrow we're going to see quite a spectacular firework display. And in the midst of all that, lunch with the Queen. So all the diplomatic boxes have been ticked, and that is very important to business. So let's get a view from business as to how strategically important this is. Richard Heald is the Chief Executive of the UK-India Business Council. Thanks for coming to join us. Let me just pick up on the controversy, first of all, of the trip. Gujarat province, it became an economic powerhouse. Can he recreate that in India as a whole?
Yes, but I think it will take time. I think there are a lot of expectations when he came in with that majority, that he was going to produce fireworks like we do in the West if you have such a majority. You've actually got a super tanker which was going in the wrong direction, and trying to turn that round takes time. He's put in measures in terms of changing the bureaucracy. He's trying to get reforms and legislation through, which will benefit a lot of people, not just business, a lot of people. And that actually, he's got to work against the complicated political dynamic that is India.
David Cameron has been 3 times to India since he was Prime Minister. He's probably invested more time in this relationship than he has indeed with China.
It actually, you've got to look at what you make there, what you process there, what you manufacture, you assemble. You may export it, you may sell it within that country. So it's much broader, more complicated picture than actually just looking at direct trade.
Okay, Richard Hill, thank you very much indeed for coming to speak to us this morning. So you can see there that there's a lot of emphasis put on this visit by trade and industry, and to that end there'll be quite a dinner.
Well, my colleague Clive Murray is in the Maltese capital, Valletta. Clive, hello to you. And if this summit has been playing catch up with the situation on the ground, which I think everyone there would accept is the case, to what extent will it make a difference?
Well, certainly the European leaders here and many of the African leaders would say that it was important for them to at least get together, to sit in the same room to discuss this issue. For too long they've been talking past each other on the problem of African migration to the European Union. So it's important that at least they've been talking to each other. And in fact, the conclusion of this summit It was actually brought forward by about an hour. Concrete suggestions, some might say that they did make progress. Let's look at what Europe had been looking for from this summit. They wanted tangible action on traffickers, to deal with those people who are facilitating the movement of illegal migrants from North Africa and other parts of the continent over to, willing to set up this stabilization fund. At the moment, the European Council has put forward 1.8 billion euros. The Council is hoping that all the members of the European Union will match that figure, and some have already pledged that they will put forward some money towards that. That money will be used to help look at some of the root causes of why people are leaving Africa. And of course, the Africans also wanted closer cooperation between the European Union and the continent in terms of legal routes of migration. So improving the opportunities for skilled workers, for instance, to be able to go and work in the European Union and so on. The summit here has agreed that there will be projects put forward to enhance employment opportunities and scholarship. So it would seem on the surface, as a result of this summit, that both sides have got to a degree what they came here to try and get. And Donald Tusk, the President of the European Council, made the announcement of some of these measures a little bit earlier.
Seizing the opportunities and facing the challenges of migration require us to work together. None of us can manage the phenomenon on our own. This is why we wanted to hold this dialogue. What we have agreed is a crucial step in reinforcing our cooperation. We have adopted a political declaration and a Valletta action plan. We now need to get moving on implementing it in partnership and solidarity.
So Donald Tusk there, the President of the European Commission, saying that this was the beginning of a process, that no one was under any illusions that the situation will be solved overnight. A modicum of agreement then between Africa and Europe on this issue, but there are deep divisions within the European side and there are deep divisions within the African side. We know the
offices might be. Not at the moment yet, but you may remember that recently HMRC was criticised by a committee of MPs for, among other things, the time taken to respond to queries from the public. So now 137 offices to close. We'll bring you more details as we get them. 4 people have been arrested in Britain under Europe-wide warrants for alleged terror offences issued by Italian police. The 4 men were detained after early morning raids at addresses in Birmingham, Derby, Sheffield and Hull. As part of the same operation, there have been arrests in Norway, Finland, Germany and Switzerland.
We have 17 arrest warrants issued, and 4 of those arrests took place in the UK. We've got a 38-year-old. This involves an alleged terror plot in Italy. The Norwegian spokesman also named an Iraqi-born cleric, because it's to do. All these people arrested are Iraqi Kurds, we're told. And in Norway, apparently, one of the people detained is an Iraqi-born cleric who has served time in prison and has been accused of funding a group which has links to so-called Islamic State.
June Kelly talking to me just a little earlier. Some news coming into us from the northeast. We're seeing that 360 jobs are to be lost at a potash mine in the northeast. ICL, which is known locally as Cleveland Potash, is restructuring its business, it says, and will be moving away from producing potash from the mine at Bulby on the Teesside, North Yorkshire border. So 360 jobs to go there. Another blow for employment in the northeast following the job losses at the steelmaker Tata in Redcar, among others. Now, a 75-year-old man who set up a Maoist commune in South London in the 1970s has gone on trial accused of raping 2 women and mistreating his own daughter over a period of 30 years. Aravindan Balakrishnan is facing 16 charges, including indecent assault and child cruelty. He denies the allegations.
About allegations concerning his own daughter, which the prosecution say was someone who was kept hidden from the world for a period of 30 years until she was able to escape from him a couple of years ago. And the prosecution have been saying that she was a child who was bullied, beaten, separated from the world. She never went to school. She never played with a friend. She never saw a doctor or a dentist. She barely left the house. And the prosecutor went on to say that the power that this defendant exercised over her meant she could never really leave. So he faces 2 charges in relation to his own daughter, one of child cruelty and one of false imprisonment. He faces other charges of rape and indecent assault against 2 other women. The prosecution's case is that they were subjected to so much violence that basically fear made them comply to his will.
It's time for sport now. Let's get the latest from Hugh at the BBC Sports Centre. Hello, Hugh.
Hello, good afternoon, Anita. President Sheikh Salman is also on the list of 5. Michel Platini will not be considered until his 90-day suspension is over. England have begun their search for a new rugby union head coach after Stuart Lancaster stepped down yesterday. A foreign coach could now be appointed for the first time. South Africa's World Cup winner Jake White is among the favourites to take the job. Eddie Jones, who coached Japan at the World Cup, the team that performed so well, is also linked with the job. Australia's Michael Cheika is another name said to be under consideration. But one man who's already ruled himself out is All Blacks assistant coach Wayne Smith. Well, former coach Sir Clive Woodward has criticised the RFU in a national newspaper this morning, saying England needs a top-to-bottom structural change. Earlier I spoke to our rugby reporter Chris Jones about his comments.
Woodward is pointing the finger here, Hugh, squarely at the RFU Chief Executive Ian Ritchie. Now, Ritchie was the man who appointed Lancaster in the first place. He gave him increased powers over the English game. He gave him a brand spanking new contract through to 2019 and beyond. And now Ritchie is the man to lead this recruitment process all over again. So Woodward is saying, how can this guy who made a mistake in the first place get another chance? Woodward arguing there should be a figure in between the chief executive
and there were other failings too, such as a record number of patients ready to leave hospital but whose discharge was delayed because of a lack of ongoing care. It's been put down to growing pressures on the NHS in England. Our health correspondent Adam Brimelow joins me now. And Adam, as you were saying earlier, all of this before we even get into the subject of winter pressures, it's very concerning, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's important to note that these are figures for September. So really late summer, early autumn. But what we're seeing are figures that you might associate with an NHS really pulling out the stops to get through a very tough winter. So that is worrying at this stage that they're in this type of situation. Remember, the great majority of NHS trusts are predicting deficits. They're overspending, but this notwithstanding that is the situation they find themselves in. How much more difficult will it be when the pressures increase even more in the coming months?
You were mentioning earlier that missing those A&E waiting time targets has become almost a routine feature, but that record number of patients in September unable to be discharged from hospital because there was nowhere else for them to go. I mean, that's really a big worry. What is the NHS trying to do about that?
Well, this has been identified for a long time as a key problem in terms of trying to unclog the system to ensure people can be admitted into hospital smoothly, and then when they're ready to leave they can be discharged and there's the appropriate type of support available to them once that situation arises. And we're seeing here evidence that the system is struggling to keep up with the sheer level of demand. Certainly it is increasing year on year, and we're seeing record levels, as you say, of patients who are having their discharge delayed. And there was Is that we're seeing record levels of activity. Certainly demand is increasing year on year, but also we're seeing millions more operations, more people coming into A&E, millions more diagnostic tests, and the government is saying it's committed £8 billion more annually by the end of this Parliament. The evidence is that that will be sorely needed.
OK, Adam, thank you very much, Adam Brimelow.
A site of the, as you say, famous Hollywood heartthrob. He arrived here shortly after 10 o'clock. He got unexpectedly out of his car early. He walked through the crowd.
They tell me stew is on the menu. What do you think of that? You got what? They tell me that stew is on the menu. I'm good with stew. I like stew.
Well, this is no ordinary coffee shop. It's a kind of social enterprise. Basically, you can go in there, you can buy yourself a coffee for yourself, and then you can pay for a second coffee, and then that's donated to someone in need, somebody homeless. Many of the people who work in there is that a quarter of our workforce are people that previously struggled with homelessness themselves. So people you would have maybe seen begging or selling the big issue. We bring in and give them employment. Well, it's fair to say that George Clooney's visit here earlier on today brought a little bit of glamour on an otherwise gloomy day. Things carrying on as normal in the coffee shop behind me here, but for the many
cartwheeled down the slope for more than 40 seconds. Towards the end of the footage, McIntosh, who was shooting a film, can be heard shouting, I'm okay, to awaiting crew members and staff. And remarkably, he suffered no serious injuries.
I'm okay.
And how lucky was he? Pretty unlucky in the first instance, but then lucky, I think, to escape that with no serious harm done. OK, it's time for a look at the weather. Let's head over to the Weather Centre and join Nick Miller for all the latest. Hello, Nick.
Hi, Anita. Much of central and eastern UK enjoying some fine weather at the moment. There's a bit of sunshine out there to be had, but things are changing, of course, as you may well have heard on
40 most shared and clicked on stories. From the sublime to the silly, we reveal the nation's real news habits. The 5 Live hit list with me, Emma Barnett, Sunday at 7:30 on Radio 5 Live.
They took on the corrupt establishment of the day. Stylish highwaymen.
The masked horseback robber who stole hard cash.
Rebel pirates.
It was the pirate, and not Britannia, who really ruled the waves.
And artful dodgers.
Closer to home, rogues threatened the lives and livelihoods of ordinary citizens.
From the lowest to the highest, there was contempt for the rule of law.
Britain's Outlaws, a 3-part series. Coming soon on BBC4 and BBC4 HD.
Hello, good afternoon. This is BBC News with me, Anita McVeigh. The headlines now at 12. 4 men have been arrested in the UK as part of an operation by Italian police over suspected terrorist offences. The arrests were made in Birmingham, Derby, Hull and Sheffield. The men were allegedly plotting to free their leader from prison in Norway. The NHS in England has missed its September target to see 95% of accident and emergency patients within 4 hours. It's also understood more than 5,000 patients were left occupying hospital beds in September, despite being ready to leave. And Hollywood film star George Clooney has visited a charity cafe in Edinburgh.
For HMRC, because those who aren't made redundant as a result of this, or might face a much longer commute than they're used to in order to get to their regional centre.
So will there be redundancies then, in addition to people being asked to relocate?
There's no number from HMRC for redundancies. Unions are fearful that it'll be thousands, perhaps even 12,000, but this would be over 10 years. And HMRC have been clear that they want to slim down. So in a sense, that's not a surprise, but it will involve a lot of disruption, because if you have just one, for instance, in the West Country, if it's in Bristol, there are other tax offices elsewhere in the West Country. People have to go a long way to get to Bristol.
HMRC was, of course, very recently criticised heavily by the Commons Treasury Committee, and amongst those criticisms, for example, it said its record of answering calls, for example, from the public was staggeringly bad. Does HMRC hope this redesign of its operation will help address
something you cope with by having small offices around the country with perhaps fewer than 10 people working there?
OK, Simon, thank you for that. Simon Gompertz. Let's return now to that visit to the UK by the Indian Prime Minister, Narendra Modi. There have been protests in Westminster from those who see him as an authoritarian figure. And my colleague Christian Fraser joins us now from Westminster. Christian.
Anita, thank you very much. Yes, I think it's worth just looking at Narendra Modi as the man himself, because I think it will put into context some of the demonstrations and also some of the support that we'll be seeing around London through the course of the day. And it is quite an extraordinary rise to leadership and to prominence. He was from the Ganchi caste in India, so from the lowest rung of the caste system. He was a chaiwala, a boy who served tea in a railway ability. Some said he bore for the riots. In fact, some said his administration had even encouraged the riots. And that is why we're seeing outside Downing Street this morning a number of groups coming together. So Muslims from Gujarat, in fact British Muslims were murdered there. We're seeing Sikhs, Hindus as well, Nepalis, all manner of different groups, religions and sects coming together in this protest. We've been talking to a human rights campaigner today outside the gates of Downing Street, Suresh Grover. He represents the British Muslims who were killed in Gujarat, and this is what he had to say.
There are Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs, Buddhists, Nepalese. A vast network, half of its components are Hindus. This idea that Hindus...
Here to the UK, we should say that we've heard from the business community today who point out he was democratically elected by 800 million people in the elections last May, and therefore, as the Prime Minister of India, he is the sort of person that trade and industry should be entertaining here in Britain. It is worth pointing out, though, that there was an early day motion that was put forward in the Parliament. It came from Jim Cunningham, the Labour MP for Coventry South, who wants the Prime Minister to raise the issue of human rights during their bilateral meetings today, and also an open letter from academics and writers.
Christian Fraser there. The stepmother of Becky Watts says she still loves her son despite him being found guilty of murdering the 16-year-old. Yesterday, Nathan Matthews was found guilty of murdering Becky during a sexually motivated kidnap plot. His girlfriend, Shauna Hall, was convicted of manslaughter for her part in the killing. In a police interview recorded in March, Nathan Matthews claimed it was an accident and he hadn't meant to kill his stepsister. He said he wanted to scare her. Well, Becky's best friend, Courtney Bicker, told Victoria Derbyshire Becky was scared of her stepbrother, but didn't tell anyone because she didn't want to cause a row.
He made some comments about killing her in the past, like quite a lot, and I think the last of the comments was last year. My opinion of him kind of changed. At first I thought he was just like a bit weird, but I didn't think he was a bit like evil or anything. But when she told me that he was saying these things, it kind of made me feel a bit scared, like for her. Like it just didn't sit right with me what she said he was, how she felt about it. She was scared, like, and she's not usually scared of much. Just to say she was scared of him, I was like, well, it must be a serious fear. I think that she felt like people either wouldn't...
Sophie Hutchinson reports.
It all comes down to the crisis care point.
Kate is painfully aware of the distress it can cause when help isn't available. Her father fell ill and started self-harming just before retiring. One night when he was suicidal, the family called an ambulance, but was told it was taking him to a mental health cafe.
I mean, what did you think?
It was a priority to people with physical illness. But in fact, what is happening is that on the front line, the psychiatric services are in serious meltdown, and everything to do with the care and treatment of mentally ill people seems to be operated on a wing and a prayer.
But the government says it's investing more than ever before in mental health. It says it's made it clear the NHS must increase spending and make sure beds are always available. Sophie Hutchinson, BBC News.
And earlier I spoke to Helen Gilbert, the author of today's
providers have restructured their services and the staff that are available to provide them. What we've seen is a move away from some of the evidence-based services which we know work, and we've seen a move towards trying to support people in the community quite legitimately, but a greater emphasis on much more self-management. Well, while that is legitimate and at the Kingsfund we really value that move, a switch from evidence-based services and a fast pace of change towards people managing their own conditions in the community has impacted on care.
Now, the government says it increased the funding for mental health services by £300 million last year to almost £12 billion. It says it wants parity of esteem for mental health services in addition to services for physical problems. So is the money there? Are you saying that the government is wrong on this?
No, the government has claimed it's increased funding. One of the challenges around where the funding is how the funding meets the needs of people in the community and how that funding flows. So while my funding may be flowing to voluntary sector services or to other new types of services, what we found in our report is that 40% of mental health trusts, so that's providers who meet the needs of people with long-term mental health problems and those people seeking help in a crisis, they're
.46. The Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has arrived in London for a 3-day visit to the UK. The leader of the world's largest democracy will address Parliament later. African and EU leaders sign a deal which pledges financial aid designed to reduce the number of migrants making their way to Europe. Fresh evidence the NHS in England is struggling to cope after A&E target. Jim Muir is with the Kurdish forces and earlier sent this report.
There, and of course those impacts are happening down there in the valley. The air coalition, the Western-led coalition, has been carrying out airstrikes as well, so the whole valley below us here with the town nestling at the foot of this very rugged mountain is wreathed in smoke. The Kurds determined to recapture the town this time, but it's going to be hard going in built-up terrain. ISIS, IS are very adept
over the wall, you know.
1 or 2 days a week, you get this awful depressed feeling.
And finally, the medical profession was beginning to listen.
A woman deserves an Indian summer in the autumn of her life and not a winter of discontent.
That conversation began when Rosemary was just 6, Lynn just 21. But it has taken until to tell me women and GPs were wrong to lose confidence in the drug.
Yes, I think there are a lot of women out there who remain still very scared to take HRT.
And yet it could help them.
Yes, yeah. I think it is a very good option for the right women. It will cure the symptoms caused by a lack of estrogen.
Are perhaps not understood fully to women.
Yeah,
and perhaps
absolutely.
more women should be open to this.
Yeah.
Take a look at this.
You've got to appreciate that
It enormously increases the workload on the doctor if he's going to start not only dealing with diseases, but taking into account the overall health and the well-being and the sex life and the flushes and everything else of every postmenopausal woman.
All the people. And we want the information, we want to know, we don't want it to happen again. There are other issues. I want a proper memorial at the crash site, a road up the mountain. There's one there already, but, further. We turned up this year for Paul's birthday to to go to the crash site, and up early, and 4 hours, managed to get up there as high as I could up to the rock face, and it gives you a bit of comfort. It's a lovely place, a very pretty place, and you've got to remember that there's only about 150 French people who live in that area as well, and it's affected them enormously, and I think something that was done a bit more properly for them as well. It would help. They've been fantastic to us, dignified and helped us, stayed at their houses. It's something should be done.
Yeah. Whose responsibility is it, do you think, to make the decision about an appropriate and dignified memorial?
I think the families. It's we're all the same. We'd all
of the UK, very gusty conditions with rain moving in. Damp and drizzly to southern parts of England into South Wales, and that cloud starting to push its way northwards, getting rid of some of the sunshine we've been seeing so far today. But much of the east of the UK will be staying dry, but turning much wetter through the afternoon across Northern Ireland and parts of northwest England into western Scotland. Some heavy rain here. Average wind speeds, but there will be strong gusty through parts of North Wales, northwest England, southwest Scotland through the weekend. Could be some flooding.
Coming up next on the BBC News Channel.
Ireland with Simon Reeve starts Sunday the 22nd of November on BBC Two.
Will also be put into removing illegal migrants from EU countries, also this lunchtime. The number of patients stuck in hospital beds in England because their discharge was delayed reaches a record high. An alleged plot to free a jihadist leader from prison. 4 men in England are among 17 arrested across Europe. India's Prime Minister arrives in Britain for a 3-day visit expected to result in billions of pounds worth of trade deals. Doctors are told to offer more women hormone replacement therapy to deal with the symptoms of the menopause. And why George Clooney has dropped in on a sandwich shop in Edinburgh, causing quite a stir.
And coming up in the sport on BBC News, who will take charge of the England rugby union side after the departure of
migration and fighting human traffickers. Well, Clive Murray is in Malta for us. Clive.
Sophie, it was an unprecedented gathering of world leaders here, the first time such a major summit has ever been held on the issue of migration, and deals have been struck on the repatriation of illegal immigrants and addressing the root causes of migration flows. Just some of the agreements made. Let's get the very latest now from Chris Morris.
Malta basking in the sunshine, but the European Union in a sea of troubles. and calling for member states to give the same amount. So far, they're falling way short. The problem is there's a demand for instant solutions, but solving conflicts and reducing poverty levels will take decades of close attention.
Now EU leaders will turn their attention to an even more pressing issue, the vast number of Syrians and others arriving in Greece from Turkey.
As frustration boils over, the migration crisis is testing European solidarity to the limit. Chris Morris, BBC News, Malta.
Well, the Africa-Europe summit itself might be over, but as Chris was indicating there will still be talks today among the EU delegation on forging a common policy on illegal migration, one that's up to the task, frankly, of dealing with the current unprecedented numbers arriving on European shores. Well, our correspondent James Reynolds is on the Serbian border with Croatia, one of the most popular routes into Western Europe.
Of so many refugees and migrants has made the old enemies of Serbia and Croatia work together. These are Croatian border guards. They've been invited here onto Serbian territory to work with their Serbian counterparts. And they're here to make sure that this train's next stop across the border into Croatia goes smoothly. The train begins
for migration, which monitors refugee flows, and that is that it took place at all. At least both sides now have a clear, unfiltered understanding of the other's needs. This summit has been a very important beginning. It is not the end of the debate on migration here. Sophie, back to you.
In Malta, thank you. The number of patients stuck in hospital beds in England because their discharge was delayed is at its highest level since records began 5 years ago. The latest figures also show the NHS missed its target to see, treat or discharge 95% of A&E
You mentioned about delayed transfers from hospital on one measure for patients in September was at a record high. They couldn't get out of hospital, quite possibly because the social care package wasn't there. This is one of the big debates ahead of the spending review by the Chancellor in a couple of weeks' time. There's been a lot of pressure on him to increase spending on the NHS in England over the next 4 years. So too pressure to at least hold the social care budget, which was cut in the last Parliament. So in the wake of these figures, I think this debate will intensify in the week.
Hugh Pym, thank you. More women should be offered hormone replacement therapy.
Do anything that was going to put me at risk.
HRT prescriptions fell more than a decade ago following a series of studies that linked the treatment to an increased risk for breast cancer and heart disease. Now, new guidelines from the health watchdog NICE call on doctors to look again at the potential risks and benefits of HRT. They say HRT should be offered to all women with debilitating symptoms.
Have been arrested in England as part of a counter-terrorism operation led by Italian police. The four from Hull, Derby, Birmingham and Sheffield were among 17 people arrested across 5 European countries. Our World Affairs correspondent Richard Galpin joins me now, and they have been arrested in connection with what?
Well, essentially, they're accusing this group. It's a group which apparently has roots right across Europe in many different countries, and they've been working together, apparently coordinating. And they're saying this group was allegedly trying to recruit fighters to go to Syria and Iraq and fight, presumably alongside groups like ISIS. They're also saying that this group was planning to overthrow the authorities in the autonomous Kurdish area of northern Iraq. And specifically, but again, this is coming from the Italian authority.
Set up a Maoist commune in South London in the 1970s has gone on trial accused of raping 2 women and mistreating his own daughter. Aravindan Balakrishnan is facing 16 charges, including rape, indecent assault and child cruelty. He denies the allegations. Tom Simons reports.
This is Aravindan Balakrishnan. He's now 75, but he's facing a string of
Police moved in 2013. The house where Aravind and Balakrishnan lived is now boarded up. He's pleaded not guilty to 16 charges. Tom Simons, BBC News, Southwark Crown Court.
The time is 1:15. Our top story this lunchtime. A £1 billion deal is signed by European and African leaders to try to stem the flow of
visit the UK for a decade. This the beginning of a 3-day trip which is expected to deliver trade deals and agreements worth billions of pounds. Preparations at Parliament Square this morning for Mr Modi's first engagement, a meeting at Downing Street with the Prime Minister. Later he will make a speech in the House of Commons before the two Prime Ministers cross the square to pay their respects at the statue of Mahatma. A century ago, India was part of the British Empire. Now it's an economic powerhouse, and this trip is about helping both countries turn a shared history into future prosperity. Ben Ando, BBC News.
Well, let's speak to our Delhi correspondent, Justin Rolat, who is in Downing Street. Tell us a bit more about what we can expect to come out of this visit.
Well, the first thing I should say is we're expecting Mr Modi any minute, so he may appear behind me. And the key thing here is that India is the fastest growing large economy in the world. And David Cameron wants a ambitions, a slew of trade deals between British and Indian companies, perhaps totaling as much as £10 billion, maybe more. There'll be talk of closer links between the City of London and the Indian economy, perhaps the city funding some of India's growth, but he's a controversial politician. He's associated with a rising climate of intolerance in India, and big demonstrations are planned. In fact, there's already a very...
The result is what the unions are calling a devastating consequence for jobs. They think thousands will be affected. HMRC is saying that the majority of their 58,000 employees will be able to move into these new regional and national centres, but obviously for some it'll just be too far away, and some will be surplus to requirements in the tax office's vision of its own future as an institution based mainly on the internet, so not needing so many people. The other concern is about service to customers. So many complaining about being held on the line by HMRC. For an hour or more and account.
Reply from the council leader to David Cameron. In his letter, the Prime Minister says, "I was disappointed at the long list of suggestions to make significant cuts to frontline services, from elderly day centres to libraries to museums." He also suggested the cuts hadn't been that big, writing, "There has been a slight fall in government grant." Chris Mason, BBC News.
The nurse who contracted Ebola while working in Sierra Leone has been released from an isolation ward at the Royal Free Hospital in London and flown back to Scotland. Pauline Kafaki was first treated for the disease at the beginning of the year and seemed to make a full recovery, but then last month she contracted meningitis and at one point was in a critical condition. She will continue to recuperate at the Queen Elizabeth University Hospital in Glasgow. The Russian President Vladimir Putin says someone must take responsibility for the doping scandals surrounding the country's athletes.
Accreditation has now been suspended and the head of the lab has resigned. There's now pressure on the government to restore confidence in Russia's anti-doping procedures.
We can change the quality of testing. We can move from quantity indicators to quality indicators. We can move from direct common doping tests to biological passport, which practically excludes any manipulation and immediately gets into the system.
The Russian Athletics Federation is expected to respond to the allegations, but the international governing body for athletics
Жаргаж өглөө өдөр болго сайхан өдөр жаргаж өглөө зарчиг ажил хаашиг амьд жаргаж өглөө өвчин залуу байна бид нэр жаргаж өглөө ашиг залуу насаа мэдэр Samsung Galaxy J1S J5 Mobicom.
I was born to go on a special journey. A special journey made a special desire. A desire not to be an ordinary man, but a special one. A special desire led to a special deed. A special deed took me to a special place. A special place may feel like someone special, but being special takes relations. Relations that are special and reliable. Special service. Premier banking. Golden Bank.
Энэ бол гүрж ногоон цай. Ямар сайхан ааг үнэртэйгээч Ахмад уурлуудын үеэс бид бүгд хэрэлдэг болсон цай да.
Харин энэ бол дүрдэг цай. Зөвхөн цайны ургамлын гадна жимсний амттай гарснаар бид бүгд амтрхан хэргэлдэг болсон. Харин энэ бол цайны шинэ үе. Цайны анхлын сайхан ааг үнрийг жимсний амттай төгс хослуулсан хаанч явсан задлаад хэрэглэх савлсан цай. Fusty. Энэ бол төгс зохицол. Coca-Cola компани бүтээгдэхүүн.
Уучлаарай манай карт уншихгүй. Хэрэглэгч үйлчлүүлэгч бүр төлбөрийн картаа болж картаараа төлбөр тооцоогоо хийхийг илүүд үздэг болсон өнөө үед танаа үйлчилгээний байгууллага одоо хүртэл бэлнээр төлбөр тооцоогоо гүйцэтгэж харилцагч үйлчлүүлэгчтэй буцаан ATM банкны салбар дээр урт дараалал зогсоон бухимдуулт юм биш үү? Миний өдөрт Эрдэнэ амьдрал мөнгө шилжүүлэх, утасны төлбөрөө төлөх зэрэгээр банктай холбогддог. Гэхдээ миний банк руу очихдоо өдрөөс өдөрт багассаар байгаа нь арилжааны банкуд технологийн гайхамшигыг харилцагчдаа мэдрүүлэхээр зорж ажиллаж байгаатай холбоотой гэж би ойлгодог юм. Яг энэ цаг үед худалдаа хөгжлийн банк бизнес эрхлэгчдэд зориулсан технологийн цоошин дэвшид болох мобайл пас үйлчилгээг нэвтрүүлж байгаа юм байна.
Circles here of the wind gusts widely 60 to 70 miles per hour. That's why there's a Met Office amber be prepared warning that some gusts could be around 80 to 90 miles per hour.
Одоо хүн буюу 8.3 тэрбум төлбөрийн карт өнөөдөр тогтмол ашиглагдсаар байна. Манай улсын хөгжмийн ялгаагүй 3.5 сая төлбөрийн картыг 2.9 сая төлбөр тооцоонд ашиглаж байгаа тоо байгаа юм. Энэ үйлдэлээр тооцож үзвэл Монгол хүн бүр багадаа нэг ширхэг эсвэл түүнээс олон төлбөрийн карт хэрэглэдэг гэсэн үг. Монгол улсад төлбөрийн картаар хийгдсэн гүйлгээ жилээс жилдээс нэмэлт 5.8 их найдад төгрөгчээ. Энэ нь улсын жилийн төсөвтөө дүүцэж очсон үзүүлэлт юм. Ийм их хэмжээний төлбөр тооцоо бэлэн бус гүйлгээгээр хийгдсэн байгаагаас харахад иргэд бэлэн мөнгөөр гүйлгээ хийхээс илүү карт ашиглах сонирхолтой болсныг ажиглаж болно.
Манай дэлгүүр мобайл хосоор үйлчлдэг болсноос хойш үйлчлэгч маань их дуртай, их сонирхлыг нь татсан үйлчлэгээ болж чадсан. Заавал кассан дээр дугаарлахгүйгээр хаач хэрэглэхэд хэлбэр байдаг нь худалдаа авагчид маань тун их таалагдж байгаа.
Мобайл посын үйлчлэгээний байгууллага бүрт байвал их зүгээр санагдаж байна. Хурдан, шуурхай, авсаархан
хэсэг нь бол баримтаа мэйлээр болон мессежээр авах боломжтой юм байна.
За, мобайл посыг бид саяхнаас ашиглаж эхэлсэн. За, бидний хувьд бол өдөрт 30 гаруй дэлгүүр үйлчлэгээний байгууллагуудаа бараг аврагддаг. Төлбөр тооцоогоо бол бизнер нь авч явах ямар ч шаардлагагүйгээр мобайл посыг ашиглаад тооцоогоо хэрэглэхээс авчдаг болсон.
Мобайл посын үйлчилгээ анх 2009 онд Америкийн нэгдсэн улсад нэвтэрч 4 жилийн дотор дэлхийд даяар 6 сая байгууллага үйлчилгээний газрууд гүйлгээнд дээр мобайл пос ашиглаж эхэлжээ. Цаашид энэ тоо өсөн нэмэгцээр 2017 он гэхэд одоогийнхоос 3 дахин их буюу 19 сая үйлчилгээний засаг мобайл посоор иргэдэд төр
Хорвоо дэлхийдээ хайртай ээж минь та минь дэсэн билээ
байсан ч харин окей чимээгүй холдохдоо би ойлгохгүй гэжээ намайг явахад чи юуч мэдээгүй хэлхий би хүсээгүй Засбараа айлж өрсөн би окей чамаас үлдсэн хайр дуулаад зулсан хивээр Засмал замын хурд зүрхэнд минь шатсан би ондооч асан Харин цагнаа аргон хоёрыг зам Чин дундын хавцаа бодлын ханы зам Шамдул мэрэгтгэн би хаалгыг хам Би удаан хавцаа stop me Бүх юм окей энэ бүхний зам Харин окей харин ариндан Шүний зам дэш дундад харан хүйт Би маргааш шиг цооширтэн Хурдны зам дээр сэтгэл минь хөврөн Жирэлцэх зам дээр амьдрал минь мөнгөрөн Тулсан бүхнээ би ардаа үлдээ Чамтай хамт үлдээ Урт хамтаа гэж би андуурч амжээ Чамд худлаа хийснээ Уучилж чадахгүй нэ Зэжинд минь хүч уралхыг мэдэрч байна Би эндээс явж байна Харин цагнаа арган хоёрыг зам Чин дундын хавцаа бодлын ханы зам Шамдул мэрэгтгэн би хаалгыг хам Би удаан хавцаа stop me Бүх юм окей энэ бүхний зам Харин окей харин ариндан Шүний зам дээр дундад харан би маргааш шиг цооширтэн Богой цаг минь цантаа дэвсэлгүй 12 дээрээс зэн хөдөлсөнгүй Сэтгэл эмзэг зүрх минь цохисоор байна Тулсан бүхнээ ардаа орхиод би явж байна
надаас нох юм үгүй чиний сэтгэл болор эрднэс тунгалаа Чиний хайр бусдаас онцгой Чиний нүднээс би ганцхан өөрийгөө хардаа Чиний зүрхэнд надаас өөр хинч үгүй Чиний нүгсэн хайраар чигүүхийч Миний хайр бүхнээс онцгой
My name is Beefy. Kiegel харагдаж байна top like a vision. Ягийн бүсгүтэн мөрөгийн passion. Илүүд тутам бами өрөөрөө би. And бүхэн яг л хуутаа санагдсан бол зөрөөрөө чи. Энэ new way. This is the way to it. байдаг л өгöd бүсгүй чүтэн нүгээр түвэ гэж анзаараагүй яг наачиг анзаараагүй яг чамтай уучран гэдгээр эцэн болохоор ганцаараагүй энэ хөргөн мөчсөн бүсгүй хараа дуулаагүй гэж надаас авч чадаагүй сэтгэлийн минь буулаач энэ юу гэж бодсон зүгээр ингээд байдаг л өгöd бүсгүй чүтэн нүгээр түвэ
Хамгийн зүү, чимхэр хамгийн бой You get анхаарсан ч би бүгд бэлэн байна We love you, here we go Cause we don't know Шинээр хэрэв гэж өгшүүр Энэхэр хамгийн зүү, чимхэр хамгийн бой You get анхаарсан ч би бүгд бэлэн байна We love you, here we go Cause we don't know Шинээр хэрэв гэж өгшүүр
Мэдэж болох нэр өсөж чинь би хариулан тэгвэл тусаж чинь гэж хэлүүл яана надад тэр би дагж чинь байна тэр тусаж чинь тэгвэл нэг үнсэж хариулан нүг би сүнсэж юрм нэг үнсэж хийж бол надад чи хүнсэж хэлхүү бискэлэн 18 тайгаа үтсгэлэн намар үлээд явахын бол нүлмэс шум байх үү бискэлэн Рхан хамаагүй чи үтсэн ятхон хамаагүй би гарсан ердөө тэнэг зан маш гондоо хооч чамаагүй тэнэг бэлгэн наруу зан ер чиний хүсгэн наруу зан би гэж нэг өргөрөө байдаг чисэн чиний хажууд наруу зан өөр нэгэн гисэхгүй чамгүй удаа маш гисэхгүй би чамаагүй захгүй амлыг бас тэмиг хөрж гэнэсгүй
хамгийн зүү чимхэр хамгийн бой You get анхаарсан ч би бүгд бэлэн байна We love you, here we go Cause we don't know Шинээр хэрэв гэж өгшүүр Энэхэр хамгийн зүү чимхэр хамгийн бой You get анхаарсан ч би бүгд бэлэн байна We love you, here we go Cause we don't know Шинээр хэрэв гэж өгшүүр Ганцаараа авах хэцүүмаа Аргагүй чамайг харсан бол Чамаас илүү бүсгүй байхгүй маа Арчин байхыг хүсэн би чиний юу Би чиний Бири зүрх сэтгэл чам руу би мөдөг юмаа Cause I love you, love you, love you, love you, love you Don't say goodbye Чи хамгийн гой бүсгүй хамгийн зүү Чи хамгийн гой You get анхаарсан ч би бүгд бэлэн байна We love you, here we go Cause we don't know Шинээр хэрэв гэж өгшүүр Энэхэр хамгийн зүү Чимхэр хамгийн бой You get анхаарсан ч би бүгд бэлэн байна We love you, here we go Cause we don't know Шинээр хэрэв гэж өгшүүр
Ladies and gentlemen, this is
Болцсон тий.
Намрын тэнгэрт сарам мэлтэг шиг Нандин сэтгэлийн гүнд чамтайгаан би Ноцон шигтэлсээр хорвоод учирсан Сэтгэл зүрхний чамаас болж чамдаж гамдан сөхрөөгүй Сэргэлэн чимэн надтайгаан Хайрцан зүрхний чамаас болж асгах нүмсэн угаагүй Учрах бүхнийг чи надтайгаа тодохоо Хаврын цэцэгсийн зөөлөн дэлбэтэ Хайрт чинийхэн уралыг цэрлээ Усны урсгал мэд зөөлөн далхатай Чинийхэн харцыг зүэрлээ Сэтгэл зүрхний чамаас болж чамдаж гамдан сөхрөөгүй Сэргэлэн чимэн надтайгаа мохорхоо ирсэн тэр ил цагт хайр авчирсан нүдний чин
Өвсөг production үзүүлж байна. Ерөнхий ивент итгэгч UFC Group Хувьсэл production-ы 10 жилийн ойд зориулав.
Жаргаагүй үлгэрийн өвөрт чамайгаан тэмэрмээр бай Сайхан хайр үлдэнэ
Хонгормен яа чи санжино бид хоёр бүтэлцэн алхаад хотын гудамжаар зугаалж байсан тэр хүмүүс шүү дээ чим иргэн дурсаж байна хонгормен санж байна дандаа чамайгаа доош дандаа чамтай гэж дандаа чинийг хайр хүргэж дандаа чамтайгаа байж дандаа чамайгаа гэж чинийг төлөө байж чамайгаа баярлуулж бүрдэ чинийг гэж амдаа за хайраа за хайраа за хайраа
хүчтэй бүсэл алдар баяны борборсон гинэгэнтэй хацаатыг хачилн хамаадаг харин нэг бүлтотч травк апэт зүгтгүй чамтай би ирхүү атж олж үгүй яах би тэрийг ирхүү асан гадын дүрмэд батан танччтэй май анда менчи зүрхцэр хүчний боёмч байна үгүй зүгээр атагсан гэнэ би топлож бачаач байна омог шиг зүгтээ ирхүү юм чи яах гэж хөө тата борхгүй баттар бакимарта ама патам ирхүү би монго كانوا مخاطبيكم أسكار بتحدث صوتا وما بعتم لكم أندرسوكم أندمورو كومبي Докторын ородаач ингээд бохчадаг ноён нуруутай алдаа онооны дэсэр бүдрэн буруутай тасан забуулчаад бонгол иргүмби мөнгө бодгоо жохрожаад хандлагын зураач огрогаараа байхгүй би замгаарсан жолооч зовтагаар байдаггүй бидээс ихэдби төргөд бадамлах талын дүрби одоолны зикүсэлгэ тайгийн мөстөби таны гүгэн чанад нохон амтэр хэрэггүй цаадсан цагийн дээр эрих чиглөө таван нэг давуу толгор гатан борхгүй We bought you, we get the side of I took a time, I should get down, I'm the war, we have such joy, I'm the back, and we did Santa, into the Santa, to go to the Kunzi, the Bokke, look to me with the corns I got, I got a window, I just took a window, I bet I'm not good on a cat, this is it too, like the nigga to the end of the room, I'm the war, what's the with the giver? Partam del kumbi Kime bi mongo da kumba Kenu mukhata biku Asakar batahadam sosta Oma partam del kumbi Endre sukto kwe Andam moro kwe Болсон бүгдийг гуйхан бодон туссан шамбар сомби Ятан бүгдийг санан миний нүдээс догс буула Гин чамай гомбож осбор чиний Үдэж хараад чамсараад чимээний үгийг бараад нүгэл сонсон чи таатаа гацгнаатай үргэж хамтаа гисгсэн шамтаа эдгэж хамтаа мөнхөд хамтаа ахыг хүснэ авч хамтаа габич таатаа хамтаа жаргасан бас бисэн сэтгэлдээ чиний дүүрээ харагсан энэ хайрын дэгийг чамдаа өгсөн юм сан уцанаач чамдаа өгсөн Дөрөв хайрын мөрдүүдийг нүмагтарай намайг амурган ондож байсныг санаа Хэвчний хэнарас үлдэн Өдөр бичмээ Надад нэрсэгэж ойлаа Хамста жаргал Бэсэн чудинээ Ятавата зэнда жаста байдаг Ивүү хагуу хайртай уучгаас инэл би минь найдаг Гэтэл би гинэ тэнэг чиний царайд хуурчирчээ Нэгэ хайр хүсэж бууруу хүндээ хатчирчээ Хайр орооны синээрээ тасны бүдэг надаас чимээр буцлаа Насан бүдэг нүсээ хүнээс чин байж унрээ Чимээ надаа гэдэг чамаг орсон Дутаггүйгээр хайртай хайртнэ Цэцэд илбэ шүдрийн муусан тэжэл аван бэлдээлдэг Хэн би чинхээ хайрыг хайлан өөрөөр нэг бүүлдэг Ахнуудээ томнол зуулан миний хайрыг хөвгөлжээ Харж явсан тэрхүү охин миний зүгхийг хөвгөлжээ Өдгөө хүртэл би чинь чамайг хайрлаж хамгаалж Эсэв өндөр болсон миний зүгхийг амьдрал хөвдөө Чирсэн ахин чамдгаа жалтай байхгүй шүү Атуу хайраа дахин бодохгүй шүү Харж миний хэнарас үлдэн Өдөр хүчмээ Надад нэрсэгэж ойлаа Хамста жаргал Бэсэн чудинээ Хайртай Бисэн чин хотлаа гэж Ганцхан мохты төлөө шанаж өргөө зовооч Үнхээр их үлдэг байсан шүү Чиний араас чамтай хайрыг хүсдэг байсан шүү Ганцхан чамаас Ахин чамтайгаа жалтай байхгүй би чинь явна да Атуу хайраа дахин нусгүй чамайг мартъя да Одоо ингээ хоёр бинэ мартаад хоёулаа Савлий да чи өргөө бодоод одоо хайраа хайгаад явна Чиний хэнарас үлдэн Надад нэрсэгэж ойлаа Хамста жаргал Бэсэн чудинээ Хайртай Бисэн чин хотлаа гэж Харж миний хэнарас үлдэн Надад нэрсэгэж ойлаа Хамста жаргал Бэсэн чудинээ Бисэн чин хотлаа гэж Зүрхнээс мөн гарсан хайрын нүднээс
зүлээсэргээ санах асаас бодож үзэн энэ хайр гэсэндээ учрах гэж чамдаа би чинээсээ очмоо Хөнгөн заснаас эсэгийн гавла хайла Алгуухан гарын салаагаар бороо болон тэр услаа Бурхан байдаг надаа Эргэлтэй гинэ бодлоо Түнээс тайван гухан болонтоо Өдөр болон мөнгөөр бодогдоо Өнгөн цэцгээс болон билбэлүүд Сондор мөнгө шумбо ходотын гүнд Гэрэлтүүдэ чимээсэл найснаа шивдээ Гэнгэрдээ дүүлэрдэн нисэгдээ шууд Харин дундаа юу гүгүүлтийн болдоо Хайрлаж харамл өвчнүүдэн сатахгүй одоо Хаан чимбээ сануулж мэдхгүй нь бодлоо Түүнийг би гомдооч Дотор сэтгэлээс нь алгуухан доширдог Үсэн нүдийн дадуудаг Зүсэр бороо болгож Зүхний гүндээ Хатасан чи надад хилээч Зэр манан үсээс Усан нүдэн мэмбэлээ Зэж хүндлэн хайрында би зүлээсэргээ Санах асаас Бодож үзэн энэ хайр гэсэндээ Учрах гэж чамдаа би чинээсээ очмоо Болоорында Зүрхэн өрөн гугаж илгүүдэгтэй алстаа Нэсэн дүүрэн очихсан би хайртаа Миний сэтгэл нэг л дараагүй шаналд автан байна Хайраа нэхэн алдахгүй гэж айн зүр хайр Захын нүгүй дадайн дунд Түүнийг хүлэн хадаж дуусган нүгүй үдлийн доогоор хүсэн шанал Уйла хайр минь надад ирэж амэн зүр хусан уйла Сэтгэлдээ дуула Би дахиад ганцаардахаас удаан хүлээд болж мартагдахаас Миний сэтгэл үргэлж имэж байхаас Аслан хотноос дурлал түүнийг би хайда Түүний өчрөөж өгөөч хэмээ залбиран байла Бүхий гарын дугуй жантаа байхыг би хүснэ Хоёр жаргалтай хосон нэснэ үүднэ Цаг чадан хаглах ууршин зүүднэ Чамаас хагцаж чадан байхаа чим надад ирнэ Зэнхэр манан үсээс Усан нүдэн мэмбэлээ Зэж хүндлэн хайрында би зүлээсэргээ Санах асаас Бодож үзэн энэ хайр гэсэндээ Учрах гэж чамдаа би чинээсээ очмоо Миний бодол санаагийн тийм энэ Аль бүхний хараад бариад бүгдийг зэн Тийм Тэр чигээр эмэл байх юм шиг Санахал гэж чам байгаа би Энэ хорводан дээр чаваа минь үнэ Холын хоёр зүрх шалан байгаа Эцэнийгэн цагт учрана хайр Энэ хайр нэгэн хэвээ байгаад байдаг хайр биш Тийм шүү миний хайр чи шүү Гэн шүү гэн хайр энэ биш шүү Энэ шүү Чими намагаа хүлээгэж хайр Энэ миний болцоо бодож асан тооцоо Өөр ирэхгүй чими намаг энэ наман оцоо Чигэд хоёр биний хайрладаг шиг Амьдрал хайр миний хайрладаг хайр Мэр манан үсээс Усан нүдэн мэмбэлээ Зэж хүндлэн хайрында би зүлээсэргээ Санах асаас Бодож үзэн энэ хайр гэсэндээ Учрах гэж чамдаа би чинээсээ очмоо Зэнхэр манан үсээс Усан нүдэн мэмбэлээ Учрах гэж чамдаа би чинээсээ очроо хайрт минь
дурсаё зүсрэг тастай нандура дурам витэг бухслаё зүсрэг тастай нандура дурам витэг бухслаё
Бид хоёрын учирсан тэр өдөр бороо ширж байсан. Хайрыг минь надтай зүг. Үлдээгээд явсан тэр өдөр харин цаасаа хэлсэн. Үйлж байхдаа чамаас өөж байсан хайраа одоо дуу болгон чамдаа. Хүслээр ирээгүй анхны хайр чи надад дурхаж хүйтэн өдрөж шинсэлэхтэй надаас чи явсан. Яагаад завал миний зүрэг чиний төлөө байсан юм бэ? Ямар ч үнгүй болсон хайр минь одоо урд муучирсан. Зодон бороо хүнийг минь шивэржээч цас орох мологгүй би мэднэ. Зөвхөн чамдан дуулах хайрын дуу зүрхэн зогсох мологгүй би мэднэ. Азар учирсан ба би жаргалтай байсан чи минь явчихсан. Хайр дурсан ч болон чиний зүрхтэй үг зохиолмоо. Урсах нулимсны тусаар бүхэн чамаас хайр нэхээгүй. Уучлал хүсэх итгэл болгон минь хариу хүсээгүй. Чамаас илүү намайг хайрлах хүн байхгүй гэж бодохоор надаас явсан чамайг санахдаа би дуулж байна. Зодон бороо хүнийг минь шивэржээч цас орох мологгүй би мэднэ. Зөвхөн чамдан дуулах хайрын дуу зүрхэн зогсох мологгүй би мэднэ. Азар учирсан ба би жаргалтай байсан чи минь явчихсан. Хайр дурсан ч болон чиний зүрхтэй үг зохиолмоо. Чамаас надад юу үлдсэнийг чи мэдхүү. Арганцаар цоглох зүрх минь цагийн зүйтэй хамт болбоо.
орлаа Дамж чадахгүй нэ Үрж байсан харин харин Чанмал болон хуверлаа Зодон бараа хүнийг бишивэрч Зас орол болоогүй би мэднэ Зөвхөн чамдан думах харин дуу Зөвхөн зогсох болоогүй би мэднэ Азар учирсан да би жаргалтай Байсан чи минь явчихсан Миний хайр дурсан ч болон чиний зүгтээ Тохиолно Зодон бараа хүнийг бишивэрч Зас орол болоогүй би мэднэ Зөвхөн чамдан думах харин дуу Зөвхөн зогсох болоогүй би мэднэ Азар учирсан да би жаргалтай Байсан чи минь явчихсан Хайр дурсан ч болон чиний зүрхтээ Үйд зохиолно
Чин тэрвэрдэг хартаа гэсэн ганцхан үгнээс усугдах тул цэвэрдэг Хамаагүй хин нэгэн хайраа бид хэлэлэг Энэ хайр бол бидэнд тэнгэрээс өгсөн билэг
Хан тэнгэрийн нулимс тусаа юу Хан гайр дунаад ч тэр юм уу Хагалжаан уулын хатнаас Тунгалаг баршаан урсан гэдэг
Чамтай зүгээр нэг уушаагүй Энэ бүхний ихлэл хайр бол хизээж хуучаагүй Алдаатай хочоодоо амьдралын зүг зөндөө байдгийг мэднэ Хизээж унтахад болохоор энэ нацундаа бид хавч юм ээ Хайрын нэг зүрхээр итгэцэн түрхээр Хайртай хүний нулимсыг хацаалтан чи бүр түрхээр Чамгүйгээр ганцаараа зовлон давшуулаад яах юм бэ Хорвоо тайлах хүнгүй бол амьд яваад яаж билээ
Домгийн мөнхийн усыг хүзэж Үзэхсэнд чамтайгаа Чаггүй болов Үрдийн амд яваад чахсан билээ Үрди амд яваад чахсан билээ
Яхш билээ
Нүдэнэгэж намайг үнсэж Нүдэнэгэж намайг дивэж Нүдэнэгэж намайг үнсэж Надад итгэж Нүдэнэгэж намайг дивэр Энэ хармын энэ хэвэр Зүрхнээ туслах нулимс юм уу Зүудний их уяах юм уу Зэжнэ дадгалах хармэн Зингиг мөхийг усч юм уу Эрдомгийн мөнхийн усыг хүзэж Үзэхсэнд чамтайгаа Учраагүй болов Үрдийн амд яваад чахсан билээ
Чамгүйгээр ганцаараа зовлон давшуулаад яах юм бэ
Үрдийн амд яваад чахсан билээ
Хорвоо тайлах хүнгүй бол амьд яваад яах ч үлээ
Эрдомгийн мөнхийн усыг хүзэж Үзэхсэнд чамтайгаа Учраагүй болов Үрдийн амд яваад чахсан билээ Үрдийн амд яваад чахсан билээ
Яхш билээ
ягч билээ Айлгал гэж төрсөн байна амьдралыг хам зүрсэн байна аз жаргал хам төрсөн байна асан турш гэж үлсэн байна Учраас мөх амьдрахын нууцсан Хоёр бүсэлгээр нэгнээд итгэж хийхиндээ итгэж Жаргалаас жаргал төрч цолыг ин хамтдаа дуулж хайрыг идүүлж итгэхгүй Амзурлаж хэтрүүлэхгүй үгээрээ биш үдээрээ хайртай гэдгээ харуулах юм уу Мөхийн уснаас чүтээ хайр гэдгийг ойлгох гомгоо
Энгийн байхна дотор учиргүй мэд санагдан Эндээс хурдхан моторхийн тутгурдхангүй мэр санагдан Гэвч тэнгийн хаяан тулсан өндөр түймэр замыг маань Хаан очих ёстой газраас тусгаарлагдсан ханны наан Цаан эндээ үлдвэл бүх зүйл энгийн бүхний дундан шингэн Өөрийгөө нэг мөр мартаад болж хөврэн дундаж нэгэн Байж чадахгүй би хавчих бүх юм жижиг засар зайд Им учраас эндээс явхаар хавтун дур би алхаж байна Ханны нүгөө тавтан гарах замдаа би ятан Хөлөө би зөөж ятан Нэг биш шота би шантан Золиос зөндөө гартан Тэр зүйл явж байгаа болохоор би Иргэж боцож жог болохгүй гэсэн цонхэтэн батуудыг толгойдоо хийн Эсрэг талтан байгаа зүйлүүд гарахны цаанаас бүтгэн Сайн харагдахгүй байгаа ч гэсэн онгойлгон би үтийхэн Хамаагүй очих газрын заман хичтэй хоч гэсэн Ядаж ганц өдөр хүссэн газаа очиж үзхийн тулд исэн
Надад хоёр сонголт байсан. Би нэг мөр сонгож нөгөөх нь орхисон. Зарим хүмүүс надаас яагаад хоёуланг нь хослуулж удаагүй бэ гэж асуудаг. Харин би тэдэнд би хоёрын хооронд дургүй гэж хэлдэг.
Нэг насаар ингийн байснаас Нэг өдөр хаан байсан дээр Нэг насаар хинчвиш байснаас Нэг өдөр хаан байсан дээр Очиг газаа ойртох тотом хийсэн сонголтонтоо Эргэлзэх нэгсэж ихсэж чийдсэн болохоор онтоо Зүйлийн тухай бодохгүй хичээж үдээ цугаа дэшсэн Агсан шатны тоо болгоныг үлдээхгүйгээр цээжлэн Өдөр хоногдон майг огтхон хүлээхгүйгээр ээжлэн Тийм болохоор би цагаас болгон үнтэй зүйлээ гэж байна Нэгтэй хүрхийн тулд би олон үнтэй юмаа гэж Хүссэн газаа очсон ч гэсэн дүүрэн байхгүй миний цээж Энэ бол миний цагаас юм Шийдсэн болохоор яд нэмэр байхгүй нэг төвлөрсөн бодол Лайрсан бух шиг сагяд хүн Чи хэрвээ үнийг сонсож байгаа бол би нэгэнтэй Замын хаталаас илүүгэн гаталчихсан байхгүй те Өөрийн бодлоо ганцхан зүг биш гэдэг батлагдах Бүтэлөөр тавьсан олон хэцүү даваа гатлах байх Азаа үзэх цаг над байхгүй бүтэх ёстой заавал энэ зүйл Энэ түмрийн артан гартал авах ёстой яагаад гэвэл Нэг насаар ингийн байснаас Нэг өдөр хаан байсан дээр Нэг насаар ингийн байснаас Нэг өдөр хаан байсан дээр Нэг өдөр хаан байсан дээр Тэнд очих хаа байсан гэд Бууж өгөх гэж буучи оронд Арг шагаа суухын оронд Чиний хамгийн сүүчийн боломж юм шиг тэр газар заавал хүр Эргэлзэх нь аргагүй чиний онгойлгосон хаалга бүр Зүг байгаагүй уртан гэхдээ нээж үзхээс нааш мэдэхгүй Энэ бол миний өдөр болгон өөртөө шивнэж хэлдэг зүйл Дуртай зүйлийг хэтөлөө би хэцүү амлалтыг хийсэн Олон амлалтуудаас ганцэнхүү амлалт минь билэн Үзэн энэ замын хаан эцэг арж байна үр дүнгийн мэдхийг Энэ бол хамгийн том шийдвэр бүх шийдвэрүүдийн минь нийлбэр Энгийн зүйл хийх цаг зөндөө хинчвиш байх бас цаг над зөндөө Харин тойлон доторх зураг бодгүй алдан топ дунгөө Топ дунгөө Топ дунгөө Алдан тэр топ дунгөө Азаа үзэх цаг над байхгүй бүтэх ёстой заавал энэ зүйл Энэ төмрийн артан гартал алхах ёстой яагаад гэвэл Нэг насаар ингийн байснаас Нэг өдөр хаан байсан дээр насаар ингийн байснаас нэг хүтэл хаан байсан дээр нэг насаар ингийн байснаас нэг хүтэл хаан байсан дээр нэг насаар хинчүүш байснаас нэг хүтэл хаан байсан дээр
Yeah? Okay. Let's do this. One more time. One more time. We do? No? We ready? Okay. DJ Taya. Remix. Rocket Bay. Юу яасан юу гинэ Рүкэт банан дүмнэ Рүкэт бага нүдэгдэхгүй юм гач дүгнэ Эдэн нашаа сүгнэ Нэр чин одоо хэмблэ Дахиад дуудмал дэжавд чин үргэн шүү би мумэтэ Тэгэхэр одоо дүмэтэ Дахиад битгий дуудаарэ Дахиад битгий бобарэ Тэнгатад дуудыг кодаарэ Хүн бацаануудыг дэгороо Өндөрвүүдэн их зороо Оролдуудан өхрүүдэхэд баба бацаа нэг зороо Одоо шатаа нэг дорон Бөөнөр хүн битанарыг Ботажокат дэбаатэн хип-хоп гэдэг чанарыг Тэдгаатэн дэгороо Ягарч үлтэн дохороо шиг Тэдгэмෝген мэдүүлдэг гэж дундэр бит хамтараа Тэдний хандыг намдараа Бодгол тэдний цагтараа Жинхэнэ нүтгэл жишээ болсон дагаж үлдэх замсараа Сонирхолч дадаг болтол тэмцэн гэж би амгараа Бид зэрбэтэ тулга хийгээ та нар жохон мангараа DJ Taya Taya Rocket Bay Rocket Bay Миний цонаа мишиг флоу Улаанбаатар хотыг живүүлэн Унаа машинууд хүртэл толоо газар шидүүлэн Ер зогсоох юм үгүй Би бодайлыг гайхамшиг Чамд одоо үзүүлэн Жихэн тайсыг гайхамшиг Би хошин шог биш Гэтэ би машинүй Автан үскэр тэмдэглэгдэн шиг хип-хопын инүй Үзүүний дасгал Эмбатигийн тембрийг хичээл Хип-хоп үгчүр сонсдог болын дуу танарын хичээл Охтыг хурууны хаан үзүүрээрээ би Зурагчиг гасан Билэн үгээрээ би дайсуудыга зурагшиг гацаан Зарим хураг шиг бацаанууд бараг хотын зэнаас бар Чихэн нүцарайга чи талинанаас хат Миний дайснууд чихэн нотор амьдэрдэг Тэд бол хөдөгчдэн сонголт байгаа Бисэн шиг хийхнийг бол болох хүргэж доошоо явна Тэд бол жорлон гимэд бос Намайг мохоо гэсэн тэнэг үгээс олон хийгэн бос Хамаа намаагүй Баяраа хийцээ чамаа хинаагүй Цанаа манаагүй Тэдгүүс намаагүй та чадаагүй Хэцэн үхий гори хороо хөвөлөнгө санаагүй Юмар сатаагаагүй хараа өмгсөн байна амаагүй Өнөөдөр имэ угаагүй бас тартанаагаагүй Ишээ иркэж байгаа чири хаагаагүй Одоо хүртэл найзаа хүнгүү баба ягаагүй Найзахтосоо салангуудаа хийсэн яба дабаду Яба дабаду Яба дабаду Яба дабаду Эмбот бабаду Яба дабаду Яба дабаду Яба дабаду Эмбот бабаду DJ Taya Rocket Bay Ойрмен Арунгоро DJ Taya Rocket Bay Ойрмен Арунгоро Джиме Oh shit.
Yes, go, yeah.
Woo!
VAP 98-ийн үзүүлж байна.
чамайг орхиод хүсэл мөрөдөлтэй мэцэг хашаа чимбэ одлоо өдөр бүхэн санаа дурсаж хүлээхэм хонгор чамайгаа нэгэн цаг би аз жаргал дундууч явсан чамтайгаа би чамайг аз жаргалтай байгаа сая гэж үргэлж хүсэн гашуу бүтэн сэтгэл дотор бороо шиг зүсрэн яг энэ ганцаараа чи ганцаараа гонигдэн яг үдэлбэлэг дээр цаг ирцэтгэл хайр урган
амьдрал бүгд автагаар дүүрэн байдаг сүмэн хайртай хүмүүс атлаас хүмүүс гадаг бүсгүн эргэж иргүүгээр явсан ч гэдэг чи би намайг мартахгүй ийм хүчтэй дуулах байсан гэдэгт хийж маргахгүй
Уцааваад чамруу заалган үгээ хэлэхгүй би чагнан энэ лүйд зүрхэн минь бомбоны тархиам одоогээс би хүлээн өрдөгчтэй инээгээд очин удал тусам хайртайгаа мэдрээ үргэж бодох
чамдал зөрөлдөө бэлхэн алхан дээр зовсон юм шиг миний зовлон чамаа бэлхэн мөр шиг нүдэлцэ хацаарта шингээс нүур болон алхан миний мэдэлтэй сайхан бүсгүй хатан жасман залхан хацаа өгсөн амдалта буцааж ганцаараа би нүдэлж харахгүй бамби ганцаараа үлдээ сэтгэл зүрх хүч хинэж дахин ихэхгүй хинэж чигтэй хүлээхгүй хайрын бодож үхэхгүй Очсон амир болоод явхад үндэ хэцүү байдаг байна. Ухаангүй болсон гам бүтгүй болох хэцүү байна.
Уцааваад чамруу заалган үгээ хэлэхгүй би чагнан энэ лүйд зүрхэн минь бомбоны тархиам одоогээс би хүлээн өрдөгчтэй инээгээд очин удал тусам хайртайгаа мэдрээ Царны тояд хинэх тэмэрч хийхвэ Бүгдсэн үхий бүх чамайг надаас мутасан Өдөр бацах хайрын аран үнсээ цагаар шуурсан Чамайг надаас юу салхан гото хиннээс асуумаар Ахин бодохгүй энэхүү хайртад ахин дахин мацуурмаар Өргөн батсан чамд би гондогүй Чамайг хизэж холоогүй Одоо бүхийдөө чамаас хоббидөө Хондоо хүндэр хайртад юм бол түндээ ингээд очдоо Чамайг явхуу цангирад гасан нүдэмсаа Буцаа зэлдэж чадаагүй Нүмбэрн горсон нүдмэс мэн одоо ботод хатаагүй Уцааваад чамруу заалган үгээ хэлэхгүй би чагнан энэ лүйд зүрхэн минь бомбоны тархиам одоогээс би хүлээн өрдөгчтэй инээгээд очин удал тусам хайртайгаа мэдрээ үргэж бодох
Өнөөдөр бич хамтдаа мөрөөдсөн ирээдүй Чамаар бүтсэн миний бүх зүйл Явах чинь үнэн бол юуч биш болж үлдээ Нисэж явсан хөлгүй гүн чинь хайрыг ганцхан үгээр хөөж чамд би Ичнэ чамд хартагээ Надаас явах зам чинь гондол нүлэм сарсаад хийхгүй Хийхгүй Олочи Надад хайргүйгээ хилээч Чи мэдэрхгүй
болохоор байна чамайг харин амьдрахгүй гэхин мэдэж надад болин үг миний сонгох там биш ээ Учир нь чи өргөд гашуун амьдралын хэсэгч гэсэн миний амрах заяа Хиний чочхарами надын мөнгөйчээ мэдээж би мэдсэн болохоор бүтгэрч мартагдахгүй битгэхгүй надад хайргүйгээ хилээч чи мэдэхгүй орчин би ямар хайртай байдгийг мэдэхгүй Өрч очсон чимээ үнэндээ миний гүн тэнгэр татсан солоо Надад үлдээсэн чиний тэр харц үргэлж тод байж намайг зүлүүлнэ Зүсэрчүүлсэн би чин дарахтаа Ханигтээс чамайг одох юм шиг ардаа Зүрхэнд итгэж татсан миний эндүү Хитэ багаж надад чамайг уучлаарай Би итгэхгүй надад хайргүйгээ хилээч чи мэдэхгүй орчин би ямар хайртай байдгийг мэдэхгүй Зүгээрл байсан зүрх сэтгэлийг Яаж чи ингэж тоглож чадваа танихгүй Хэвээрээ үлдчихгүй намайг өндөрлөж хавтаа Байж байсан жирийн өдрүүдийг Яаж чи ингэж орчилж чадваа мэдэхгүй Хэвээрээ зурчихгүй чамайг би харж хавтаа Би чамд хайртай гэж хэлэхгүйгээ Зүрхэн чин хараа би мэдрүүлнэ Мэдэрсэн тэр хайрынхаа хайрууд Миний хүрт байна гэж надтай шинээрээ Урсан өнгөрөх хорон бүхнийг Ганцаараа би яаж тулаавэ Явсан хараа Чамдад үхэл бачдээ Харанхуйд нүгдах тэр гэрлийг Хайраараа би асаахал бачдээ Надаас өөр хинээс ч авахгүй Найдан бүхнийг чамд амлий Би чамд хайртай гэж хэлэхгүйгээ Зүрхэн чин хараа би мэдрүүлнэ Мэдэрсэн тэр хайрынхаа хайрууд Миний хүрт байна гэж надтай шинээрээ
золбоо. Сар гарнаа золбоо.
Би чамд нэг л юм хэлье. Би чамд хайртай.
Чамаа эндээс зайл гэж байна.